Hello, ninth and 10th grade literature class. It's good to see you, or to be seen. We are going to be talking a little bit more about Proverbs today. We're continuing on that. We may finish up the biblical version or the biblical portion of Proverbs today. Before we get into that, though, I just want to remind you that you do have another assignment that you're supposed to be doing in between our lectures here, and that is reading The Art of War. Don't forget, it is available for free as a PDF online. You can just type in Art of War and it will come up as a free PDF. You can also listen to it for free on YouTube, so take advantage of that if you'd rather listen to it rather than read it. You do need to fill in the homework assignment that's attached to The Art of War. Normally we would do this together in a classroom. We just don't have that option available to us, so we're doing the best we can with what we have. It is a very good compilation of Proverbs that aren't really all about war. I mean, that's what it's written about, but it can be applied to everyday life, including business, teaching, management. It's all there. It really has more to do with paying attention to your surroundings and to the people you are working with than actually defeating an enemy. So don't forget to be working on Art of War as you are also working on the other literature that I'm giving you for homework. So we are starting today with Proverbs 30, 1 through 33. These are the words of Agur, who is the son of Jekiah. Even the prophecy, the man spake unto Ithiel, even unto Ithiel and to Ukal. We don't know really anything about Agur. There really just isn't a lot of information about him at all. So we just assume that this is a person that God had chosen for the Holy Spirit to inhabit for a period of time and to breathe out his inspiration for these specific proverbs. He has no relation, as far as we can tell, to the line of kings in Israel or Judah. We just don't know anything about him. But what this can tell us, even if he isn't from the tribes of Israel or the kingdom of Judah, is that God can talk and use anyone, talk through and use anyone to give his message across. So let's talk about the words of Agur. First verse is just his introduction, and that's all we really need to know about him. But in Verse 2, he begins to describe himself. He says, "Surely I am more brutish than any man." Brutish meaning animal-like. He's more animalistic than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. He sees himself as being more animal than human. "I neither learned wisdom, nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who hath ascertained up into heaven, or who descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fists? Who has bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell?" Now, he is giving us a question, several questions, where he is trying to get us to answer this using logic, okay, and using what we already know about God. Since this is written in the Bible, we know the answer to all of these is God. But here he is, this king, who is saying, look, I am more animal than human. I'm brutish. I've never really learned wisdom, and I have no knowledge of the holy. And yet the very first things he says show us that the opposite is true. He does think about God. He has looked for wisdom. He has looked for knowledge of the holy, but he is saying, who could possibly do this? So on question number 22, I specifically ask you, what does Agur mean when he claims to have no knowledge of the holy? And I give you a couple of options here. That no one can truly know the power of God, no one can truly know the history of God, no one could truly know the person of God. When you think about a person who's truly knowledgeable, one of the things it will tell you is the more they learn, the less they know. I love to read. I adore reading. I'm the bookiest, nerdest person you'd ever want to meet. I absolutely love reading, as you can tell from my background. This isn't a screenshot background. This isn't something from an app. This is my library at home. I love reading. But one of the things that kind of hurts the heart of every book nerd is the fact that I know, I'll never read every book that I want to read. I don't have the knowledge to look into every single book that I want to read, and I don't have the availability. Now, having digital books available has been a huge, huge opportunity for people to work and to read. I read in every kind of genre almost, and in every kind of format. So I will read hardback books, which you see behind me. Those are hard copy books. I also read digital books. I listen to audibles. So I have all of these things available to me, but the more I learn in books and the more books I come in contact with, the more I realize I will never read as much as I really, really want to. I will never have that complete and total knowledge. One of my big heroes, and you know this from history class, is a man who lived during the medieval times, and he actually got to read every single book that was in print during his lifetime, because there weren't a lot of books in print during his lifetime, and he read them. He read them all. And as a result of that, I have great respect for Erasmus, because, hey, the man read every book in the world. You think about it, it's just amazing. Because there were so few printed books, he could actually say he did that. I can't do that. As much as I would love to, as much as I would love to live a million lifetimes and just read every book that's ever been written and truly understand it and be able to recall it, that would be amazing. But I just can't. That's impossible. When I read Proverbs 30, that's how I see Augur when he looks at the wisdom and knowledge of God. He says, I've never learned wisdom. I neither learned wisdom nor have knowledge of the holy. It isn't because he hasn't tried. It's because it's impossible. There is such a wealth of wisdom and knowledge concerning God that no one can ever truly know it all. Now, I'm never going to read every single book that's printed today, but that's not going to stop me from trying. I'm still going to read a lot of books. Okay? And it's not going to stop Augur from really getting to know who God is. And from his other verses in Proverbs 30, we're going to see him really pushing to discover the truth of God's word. So, verses 5 and 6, he says, every word of God is pure. That means it doesn't have any blemishes, no impurities. He is a shield unto them who put their trust in him. Add not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. So first of all, God's word is pure. If you trust him and you trust his pure word, he is a shield to you. But if you add to his words and try to add your own little spin on things, or try to add things and say, this is what the Bible actually says here, when you're just pushing your own agenda, you're going to be found a liar, and God himself is going to reprove you. Verse 7 says, 2 things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. And here he is asking this of God. 2 things he's asking of God. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Vanity is an old word meaning emptiness. Just pride and emptiness. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me food convenient for me. And then he's going to be explaining why he wants those specific things. Lest means so I don't become, or just in case I become, lest I be full and deny thee. So he says, feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee. He doesn't want to become full of himself or of food and then deny Christ. Or lest I be poor and steal. He doesn't want to ruin the reputation of God by being one of God's chosen people that he is now stealing, because that would ruin the reputation of everyone. Lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. So remove from me these things. Then he gives information or advice to those who are reading. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee and thou be found guilty. So don't accuse a servant to his master. You don't know what was actually going on between servant and master. And if you go behind the servant to the master and tattle on him, you may be actually getting involved in something you shouldn't be involved in, and you will be cursed, maybe by the master, maybe by the servant, and you'll be found guilty. Then he says, there is a generation that curseth their father and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. Now, there are 4 marks for this generation that Augur mentions, and you could use these 4 marks in every generation. You will find people in every generation that do these things. It isn't a specific generation that is being accused. It is people within a generation that are being accused. In those generations, look at it. There's a generation. Every generation has people in it that curse their father and do not bless their mother. They are angry about the way they've been raised. They go after, or they complain, or they accuse their parents of not doing good for them, even if their parents have done everything they possibly could to help them. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, yet is not washed from their filthiness. I see this a lot. Well, in history, we see it all the time. It just recurs constantly. But I've seen it recently with people who are demanding that governments take over in areas like climate change. They want the governments to set standards for climate change. And when the activists are making these statements that the government should make those standards, they have been asked, well, what are you personally doing for climate change? And they will lose their minds and say, well, it's not my responsibility. It's the government's responsibility. So there is that idea that they're pure in their own eyes and they're not washed from their filthiness. They don't see how they need to make little changes that will affect a great change. There's a generation, how lofty are their eyes? It means they're always looking up. They're looking away from what's down below them. Their eyelids are lifted up. They're looking up. They're rolling their eyes because they believe that they are more important than anyone else. And then 14 is kind of scary. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords and their jaw teeth as knives. They devour the poor from off the earth and the needy from among men. They have no concern or care for the people who absolutely need help. Okay, the horse leech hath 2 daughters, crying, give, give. Okay, a horse leech is exactly what it sounds like. It's a type of worm that would actually suck blood off a horse. I'm assuming that's what it is. Having 2 daughters crying, give, give. The idea that there is never going to be enough. They're sucking the blood right out of you, but it's never going to be enough. There are 3 things that are never satisfied. Yea, 4 things say not, it is enough. So now he's going to give us 3 things that are never satisfied. And the 4th thing is going to be something that, again, is going to be even more so saying it's not enough. The 4th thing, where he says there's 3 things and then there's a 4th thing, that 4th thing is like the greatest thing. So the grave, there's never satisfied with the grave is never satisfied. There will always be a need for more graves because people continue to die. The barren womb, it's when someone wants to have a child and cannot have a child. The earth that is not filled with water. If you water your gardens, right now it's raining outside, but if you water your garden on even right now when it's raining, the water seeps into the ground. Even if it pools up to the top of the soil for a few minutes, it will eventually pull down into the soil. So the earth will always suck that water in. It's never going to be enough all the time. And then the fire that saith, it is enough. Fire will consume and consume and consume until it has consumed everything. It's never says, forest fires never go, you know what, we're just going to burn, a couple acres and then we're just going to put ourselves out. No, that's not what happens. Fire destroys everything. So there's 3 things that are never satisfied. And then there's a 4th thing that is so destructive, it takes out everything in its path. Then we have on verse 17, it says, the eye that mocketh at his father, that means to make fun. To mock is to make fun of something or someone. And despiseth to obey his mother. Obedience is important. It's not obedience to the point where you are just a brainless idiot, acting like a robot, walking around saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I'll do this, I'll do that. That's not what we're talking about. Obedience, there is a sense of wanting to do what is right. So your parents asking you to do something and you wanting to satisfy them by doing what's right. The eye of that mocketh his father and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pluck out the eye. The young eagle shall eat it. This is a pretty harsh verse, and it's really promoting this idea of you need to listen to what your parents are trying to teach you, because usually parents are trying to teach you so that you can be safe, so that you can be an honorable person. You don't want to have your life destroyed because you refuse to listen to your parents. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. So there are 3 mysteries and then 1 big mystery that he just cannot get over. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Ooh, we're going to get here. Okay, so the way of an eagle in the air. An eagle only has to flap its wings every so often. It can glide on airstreams for long periods of time, but it can also soar almost in a vertical motion and go down into the water and catch fish. So it can soar, it can dive. It is a miraculous feat of engineering. So the way of an eagle in the air, watching the movement of an eagle in the air. And then the way of a serpent upon a rock. I personally do not like snakes, but I understand what this verse is talking about. The idea that a serpent can move its body in such a way that it can go up rocks, it can go over barbed wire, it can go, which just freaks me out, honestly. It can move without arms and legs just by using the muscles of its body. The way of a ship in the midst of the sea. The way a ship can roll with the ocean, with the sea, with the waves, and still remain upright. And then the way of a man with a maid. Yes, it's exactly what it's talking about. It is talking about a love relationship between a man and a woman, and is talking about the act here. And he says that is one of the most miraculous things I can think of, and one of the things that's too wonderful for me to truly comprehend, that God would give us this kind of gift, which is a gift. It just needs to be at the right time in the right place. So once you're married, that is for you. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. Now we have someone who's not a man with a maid. We have an adulterous woman. That means she is either married or she is sleeping with a man that she is not married to, but he is married to someone else. So she is breaking up a house, either her own or somebody else's house. And she can't do that alone, by the way. She has to have a partner. There's not an adulterous woman who doesn't have a partner. Okay, there has to be both. But in this case, he's giving the idea of the adulterous woman. Such is the way of the adulterous woman. She eateth, wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. So she will do what's wrong. She will do it calmly, concretely. She will do it almost with a sense of decorum. And then she'll walk away and say, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm doing what I want. Okay. For 3 things, the earth is disquieted. That means the earth looks at this and says, this isn't right. This goes against nature. And 4 for which it cannot bear. 4 things that the earth cannot stand. And he's talking about the world cannot stand this. Okay. So the first thing is going to be for a servant when he reigneth. There is supposed to be a king in charge, but the servant is actually working as the servant for the king. Because we are also in a world history class, we have seen where this has happened before, specifically with Charles Martel's son Pepin, when he went to the Pope and said, look, my family has been part of the mayors of the palace in France for generations, but we are the ones running the country, and the Merovingian line is the guy who's in charge of that line has become a complete and utter fool. All he wants to do is party and play. We are the ones doing the work. We should get the title. And the Pope told him, absolutely you should. And he ended up getting crowned the new king of France and starting a brand new line. So when a servant reigneth, instead of the king that's supposed to reign, that's a problem, because that's the king's responsibility. Okay? A fool when he is filled with meat. A fool is someone who knows better, but chooses not to apply wisdom and knowledge. So he's filled with meat. He knows better, but he is just building himself up. For an odious woman would be someone who is hated. For an odious woman when she is married, that is a horrible, horrible thing to have to go through. For a woman to be hated and yet married. Now, we're talking about a time when there were a lot of people who did arranged marriages for political reason and for political gain. For a woman to be hated by her husband, given in marriage to this husband by her father or by another family member, and then finding out that she's hated, that's heartbreaking. And it's something that people just can't bear. So an odious woman, she's married, and then a handmaid that is heir to her mistress. The idea there that the handmaid would be the next in line if something happened to the mistress. In other words, she would be taken by the husband. There be 4 things which are little upon the earth. They're teeny tiny, but they are exceeding wise. This is interesting. We've got little things that can be wise. Ants. Ants are a people not strong. I mean, ants are pretty easy to kill for the most part, but yet they prepare their meat in the summer. Have you ever heard the fable of the ants and the grasshopper? We have an example right here. The ants are people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. Meat in this case means grain. Okay. The conies, and this is a type of hare or rabbit, are but feeble folk. They're not very strong, yet they make their houses in the rocks. They live in the rocks of the hills. The locusts have no kings, yet they go forth, all of them by bands. And then finally, and the spider taketh hold with her hands and is in the king's palaces. So a spider is small, but yet they are found everywhere, and their work is intricate and amazing. Okay. There be 3 things which go well. That means when they walk away, people are like in awe. Yea, 4 are comely, beautiful in going. A lion which is strongest among the beasts, and turneth not away for any. A greyhound, and he goat also, and a king against whom there is no rising up. These things bring on the reaction of awe. So you've got a lion, a greyhound, which is a type of dog, a he-goat, which is a ram, and a king. Now, he's going to give us some honest-to-goodness advice here. You ready? If thou hast done foolishly in lifting up thyself, or if thou hast thought evil, lay thy hand upon thy mouth. If you said something stupid, cover your mouth. Close it down. Shut it down, people. Shut your mouth, close it, be quiet. Shush. Okay? So if you've done foolishly, you've thought evil, lay your hand upon your mouth. Don't say it. Just be quiet. Hush. Okay? You'll notice he doesn't say, if you've done foolishly, blame somebody else or, tell somebody else that they messed up by making you do that. No, he doesn't do that. It's your responsibility. And then he says, I love this example. Surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter. When milk is churned, it's really the cream of the milk. When it is churned, the fat congeals together and creates this little fat ball. And that fat ball is the butter. It's basically all the milk, all the fat in the milk has been gathered together into this little ball. I know we're like kind of stuck inside a lot, and you have to make some pretty quick trips to the store. But if you want to try to make butter at home, this is a good time to do it. You're not really doing a whole lot else. You can just purchase some heavy whipping cream, not in the spray can, but in like a little carton, a milk carton, heavy whipping cream. Put it into a glass jar with a screw-on lid and shake it back and forth for several minutes. It's going to take a while until all of the fat will congeal together in the form of butter, and then you can eat it on bread. However, it's like 100% fat, so go easy because it will make you sick if you eat too much at once. But fun to do. Okay, so the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. Just 2 very, very different examples. If you churn butter, churn milk, you're going to get butter. If you churn your nose, if you wring your nose, you're going to get blood out of it. And he says, and so the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. If you're constantly pushing people to get angry and angry and angry, you're going to get strife. People are going to fight. Some people like that. I don't understand that. that way of thinking, but the idea of just pushing and pushing and pushing until finally things explode. So you don't want to do that. You want to avoid those at all costs. Okay, so that is Proverbs 30. Really interesting, good information, and a little different than the other Proverbs because of Augur's voice is very, very different. The next Proverbs we're going to look at are Proverbs 31, and it's only a portion. It's Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. Proverbs 31 is written to Samuel or Lemuel by his mother Bathsheba. I put Samuel there. That's wrong. It should be Solomon. I apologize for that. It is also a guideline for women and how they are to order their lives. Now, this is advice by a woman for women, but it's also the Holy Spirit speaking through this woman who is giving this information. So this passage can be looked at in two very different ways. Some, and unfortunately, this seems to be a lot of people who really don't have a lot of study in the Bible, or who have it fixed in their heads that men are a superior being in the Bible, which the Bible doesn't really teach that. So they will look at this and say, this is a list of chores of everything a woman needs to do in order to please her husband and society. That is not what this is really speaking about. So when I look at this, I was in a classroom one time where somebody actually did Proverbs 31, 10 through 31 to explain what a biblical woman would be like. And he was really castigated by the class because it was a public college. And they basically looked at him as like, you're just trying to keep women down. You're just trying to keep women in the home and without a career. And he had no way to really combat what they were saying. And I felt kind of bad for him. He was a fairly new Christian. And he was looking at this as being showing women in their worthfulness, how women are worthy creatures and worthy of love. And I wished that I could have stepped in, but it wasn't my fight. So much later in 2014, I wrote an article basically showing how Proverbs 31, 10 through 31 is really a biblical bill of women's rights. Just like we have a Bill of Rights in the Constitution, you could look at this as a Bill of Rights. So I'm just going to go through it, and my words are in the italics. We start with 10. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Virtuous meaning valor or valorous. It's the exact same word that is translated as valor for men. Virtuous is the feminine side of that. Okay, so it's almost like she is a knight or a dame, what we would call. So I put, the woman has a right to her own worth, and that worth is hers alone. Her value is based on her character, and not her circumstances, not her family, not her relationship status. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. So she has the right to develop her trustworthiness and kindness, and she has the right to choose how she treats others. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She has the right to work at a job or a career of her choosing. That's what that willingness is all about. She is like the merchant ships. She bringeth food from afar. She has the right to choose the most economically and nutritionally sound way to provide the best food for her family. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She has the right to run her household, organizing schedules, planning menus, and assigning jobs, chores, and responsibilities to those under her leadership, because that makes her the leader in the household. Okay, she considereth a field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. She has the right to own property, to develop that property as she sees fit, and to reap the benefits of the property's equity. That is the money that the property has earned. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She has the right to be physically strong and fit. She perceiveth her merchandise as good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She has the right to compete in the marketplace, and to put in the time and effort it takes to make a profit. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. Yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She has the right to be charitable and generous. She has the right to help those who cannot help themselves. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She has the right to provide for all of those under her care. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. She has the right to be fashionable. We've talked a little bit about modesty this year. Modesty is the word decorous. It's keeping with good taste and propriety. It's being polite and restrained. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She has the right to share her reputation with those she loves. Your parents do that, and you do too. Whether you think you do or not, you are sharing your reputation with your family. She maketh fine linen and selleth it, and she delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. So she has the right to prove her worth in the marketplace. If people don't like her stuff, they aren't going to buy her stuff. She has the right to create her own vision of self-worth. She has the right to prepare for the future. She has the right to be happy. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She has the right to an education, and to apply the education to her life. She has the right to speak. She has the right to prove her innate kindness to others. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. She has the right to care for her family and those who work for her. She has the right to be energetic. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. She has the right to respect. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. She has a right to obtain personal excellence. Favor is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. She has the right to a personal relationship with God. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. She has the right to a reputation of her own making. That is what makes up a virtuous woman. Okay, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much. Please reread these and do the homework that is assigned to you in your book. And I will get together with you again very soon. Goodbye.